This 9th volume of European Video Express opens in Austria's capital city, Vienna. This is one of the historic cities of Europe. It lies at the intersection of two great routes from west to east along the Danube and from north to south between the Baltic and the Adriatic. In railway terms, it still retains its historic importance. It's the terminus for many international trains and a port of call for many more as they head across the border which still divides Western Europe from the Eastern Bloc. Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey and Yugoslavia all have direct connections with Vienna, as does virtually every Western European nation. Several hours spent at the city's Westbahnhof yields a rich and varied reward. The 104-2 class was built over a 14-year period from 1963. It's Austria's most numerous class, and it's a mixed traffic design with two variants. The first 60 units have a top speed of 130 kilometers per hour, but the later batch of 195 machines were fitted with rheostatic braking and are capable of 150 kilometers per hour. This train is destined for St. Valentin on the main line towards Linz. This is the Rosenkavalier from Paris, at the end of its overnight journey from the French capital via Strasbourg, Kehl, Karlsruhe, Munich and Salzburg. The 104-4 class at the head of the train is an Austrian development of the Swedish-built 104-3 class. The 104-4s have grown greatly in number over the last 11 years, and they can be found on mixed traffic duties on all main lines and some branches. They even work into Germany, as far as Frankfurt am Main and Munich. In October 1987, one member of the class was delivered for use as a 220 km/h high-speed test bed. Modifications included new gearing and transmission. Dampers were also inserted between the body and the bogie frames. Initial tests showed the machine to be capable of 250 km/h, although there's no stretch of Austrian track capable of accepting this speed. Delivery began in 1989 of a new series of 15 Class 1044 locomotives built by Simmering Graz-Pauker. They have a restyled exterior and are geared for 180 km/h running. This train of new coaches is in fact an empty stock working, and a number of wagons are hitching a ride at the rear. In an outburst of ecological encouragement, many Austrian trains have been provided with vans to carry bicycles. It's not known just how well used the service is. The most famous of all trains to arrive in Vienna is the Orient Express. Although it's no longer the favored transport for spies and the lesser aristocracy, it is an intriguing train. Who, for example, travels these days from Paris to Bucharest or Budapest? Certainly, it's a heavily loaded train, but few passengers can travel the entire distance. The Orient Express now provides a sort of series of end-on regional services between major centres in the 5 countries it travels through. Unlike many other railway administrations, Austrian Federal Railways, OBB, has in recent years favoured electric multiple units for long-distance internal services like this one from Bregenz. The 4010 EMUs were built by Simmering Graz Pauker between 1965 and 1978 for the Transalpine service. Comfortable train travel was considerably enhanced with the introduction of these 6-car sets. Each set has its own catering facility and an onboard telephone which can be used anywhere en route. Maximum speed is a fairly low 150 kilometers per hour. These 3-car units of the 4030 class were built for suburban services around Vienna between 1961 and 1966. A further batch followed in the early 70s. Some sets have now been transferred to Linz and Salzburg. Those around Vienna have a different kind of coupling device. They work mostly over short distances, with frequent stops, where the limited top speed of 100 kilometers per hour is not a liability. These are the very latest in Austrian electric multiple units, the 4020 class. The newest sets are only 3 years old, although the first rolled off the production line in 1978. These 3-car sets are used extensively for suburban work around Vienna, and also on similar duties in Linz, Innsbruck and Bludenz. Various types of diesel and electric shunting locomotives scurry around the station. The most common is the 2062 class of diesel hydraulics built by Jenbach between 1958 and 1966 for use all over the Austrian system. The 2067 class was designed for heavy-duty shunting, mainly in hump yards, where their extra power is needed to push long strings of wagons up the incline. This one has found another purpose around Vienna's main station. There are just over 100 of these machines in use, and just like many other Austrian designs, they were constructed over a long period, in this case 18 years beginning in 1959. Also on shunting duty today is this wonderful old 1062 class electric locomotive. It was built in 1955 by Floresdorf with electric parts by AEG and Siemens. Its 68 tons can be propelled along by its traction motor at the not very great speed of 50 kilometers per hour. Only 12 of these machines were built, so the sight of those superb connection rods in motion is rare indeed. Being totally landlocked and deficient in many natural resources, Austria is dependent upon international trade. One of the most important trade arteries flows through the Brenner Pass into Italy. It's a difficult, mountainous route, and many of the heavier freight trains require 2 or even 3 locomotives to cope with the severe gradients. Railway construction began in this forbidding territory in 1864, and the Austrian-Prussian War of 1866 notwithstanding, the line was opened in August 1867. In those days of pioneering steam traction, the 127 kilometers from Innsbruck to Bolzano in Italy took 5 hours. For 61 years, steam was king on this mountain, until electrification came in 1928 on the Austrian side and a year later in Italy. Although the northern ramp on the Austrian side of the border is much shorter, it's steeper than its Italian counterpart, with a ruling gradient of 1 in 38.5 against 1 in 45.5 on the southern ramp. Elderly Class 1110 and 1020 locomotives have been modified by Austrian Federal Railways to match the performance of the modern 1044 class on the steep slopes. Their dynamic braking ability has been improved and radio communication installed. This has increased the maximum train load over the Brenner to 1,500 tons. Not all freight trains are in the heavyweight league. A great deal of transit traffic between Germany and Italy passes this way, and Deutsche Bundesbahn locomotives often haul trains all the way across Austria to the Italian border. The Austrian, Italian and German governments have agreed that the present route must be replaced by a deep-level base tunnel. How to finance this project is the current problem. Not unnaturally, the three nations would like to see the EEC foot the major part of the bill. But a world record-breaking 65-kilometre tunnel would be an immense capital venture, even at that level. Whatever the politics may be, we can be sure the trains will continue to roll across the Brenner Pass for some years to come. The new motorway in the background is steeply graded and the only open stretch in Austria on which tolls are levied. The government's policy is to encourage heavy lorries to take to the rails on special piggyback trains. New suburban three-car electric multiple units of the 4020 class have recently replaced older sets on the line. All station stopping services are not particularly frequent, as this is an area of widely scattered small communities. Long-distance express services are also not as frequent as on many other international routes, and many of them pass this way at night. The Munich to Florence, Dortmund to Ancona, and Munich to Naples trains all cross the Brenner in the small hours. One of the principal trains to use the route in daylight hours is the Michelangelo from Nuremberg to Rome. Here it's passing two helper locomotives returning to Innsbruck to wait their turn to assist another freight train over the pass. Brenner is a notorious bottleneck for lorries waiting to cross the border. From time to time, frustration has spilt over, and drivers have blocked the pass entirely. Such hold-ups do not affect rail traffic. Italian locomotives have to be removed from their trains by diesel shunters, as the overhead electric systems in the two countries are different. Here, an E632 class locomotive has been detached from the northbound Leonardo da Vinci, which is being handed over to a Class 1044 machine. These are a development of the Swedish-built 1043 class, and the most advanced development of the new type, the 10445s, are still being delivered. It's likely that this 1044 will stay at the head of the Dortmund-bound train well into Germany, probably as far as Munich. Of all the trains which cross the Brenner Pass, the most famous is the Venice-Simplon Orient Express. 17 beautifully restored wagon-lit coaches of the utmost opulence glide their way between Paris and Venice twice weekly. It's a romantic vestige of railway's Belle Epoque era, and probably, mile for mile, the most expensive railway journey on Earth. Few who witness its passing would not swap places with those within if given half a chance. Not quite so glamorous is this remnant of a fast disappearing era. The ALE 840 railcars were built in 1951 for fast cross-country services. Their 150 kilometers per hour top speed is higher than many railcars being built today, and they do have a certain elegance. There's something timeless about this scene. A venerable piece of motive power gliding to a halt at a wayside station to ferry shoppers and schoolchildren to their destinations. This is the modern face of Italian motive power, an E633 class at the head of a string of the very latest Grand Comfort coaches on an international service to Munich. There are several alternative routes between Innsbruck and the Austrian capital, Vienna, and only one remains entirely within the country. This route, via Villach, dissects a large slice of Italy. Although trains may be brought to a halt by operational considerations, this is a corridor route, and no scheduled stops are made in Italy. This is one of the lorry piggyback trains designed to rid the motorway of the environmentally unfriendly 38-ton juggernauts. Although this one is lightly loaded, many are oversubscribed, and the service is rapidly increasing in popularity. The versatile E633 class of machines find themselves at the head of all kinds of trains. This string of vehicle carriers is heading back to one of Germany's Volkswagen distribution centers. If a base tunnel is ever completed, it will revolutionize international communications. But in the meantime, the thunder of passing trains will continue to echo around the Alps, which tower over the Brenner Pass. It's the thunder of the Mediterranean surf, which is more a feature of the Sardinian landscape than the roar of passing trains. But the island does have a fascinating railway system. This is just one additional compulsive reason for visiting Italy's second largest island, with its clean sea, glimmering lagoons with nesting flamingos, and its unspoilt interior, full of ancient fascination. The Royal Sardinian Railways opened the first line here in 1871, and by 1883, a 400-kilometre system connecting the island's principal cities was complete. This was the island's standard gauge system, virtually all of which is still intact today. In addition, there is a vast, sprawling and disjointed network consisting of 631 route kilometers of 950mm gauge track divided between two companies. A plan to electrify the standard gauge lines has had to be shelved as the cash has run out, and ALN 668 Fiat rail cars, like this one, will continue to rattle along for years to come. This class was constructed from 1956 onwards, and there are 778 units in service all over Italy. On the island, they're fitted with animal fenders or cow catchers, as straying animals are a problem here. Push-pull express trains are in the hands of D445 diesel locomotives built in the early 70s. At Kilvarni, two newer Class 345 machines await their next task. There are only 3 trains a day which run the island's entire length, and most trains, like this one, provide a regional service over particular stretches of the route.
Ozieri Grivani, stazione di Ozieri Grivani, coincidenza per Magomero Restano e Cagliari, binario 5. Coincidenza per Magomero Restano Cagliari, binario 5.
There are 2 named express trains. The Frecciasarda, which runs between Cagliari and Olbia, and this one, the Turitano, which connects Cagliari and Porto Torres. Smart, friendly policemen oversee the comings and goings of every train and passenger. For the Turitano, a change of direction is necessary in Kilvarni for the rest of its southward journey. Porto Torres is the most northerly part of the rail network and the place from which ferries leave for the mainland. A row of dejected ALN 772 rail cars rests in the sun nearby. These Fiat-built 72-seat rail cars are half a century old, and perhaps they now find themselves redundant. In contrast to the main railway, the narrow gauge network is utterly appealing. It's full of bucolic charm. The organization is totally relaxed, and the timetable is rarely published in time to be included in Italy's main travel guides. But the locals know when the trains run, and they're the ones who really need to know. Well, this is a railway for school children, peasants going to market, and for the occasional trip to the big city, by Sardinian standards, of Cagliari. It's amazing that this island, which measures only 220 by 110 kilometers, has no less than 600 kilometers of narrow gauge railways crisscrossing the island. The southern and northern sections are separate. The main line, if indeed it can be called that, is owned by the Ferrovia Complementare della Sardegna. It runs from Arbatax on the east coast to Cagliari. The northern section is operated by the Strade Ferrate Sardegna. In fact, the two companies share the same office building in Cagliari and have the same operating manager. Visually, the systems differ little. Diminutive sand-colored railcars zip along in a rather wild fashion, whilst diesel-haul trains seem a little more sedate. Of course, it's all an illusion, as neither travel at more than 45 kilometers per hour. It just seems so much faster. When the 950mm system was installed in 1915, its motive power consisted of these tiny 262 tank engines built by Breda. Now the remains of the fleet gently decomposes here at Mandas. One steam locomotive has been renovated for use on special excursions, but no one seemed to know where it was when we visited. These rusting retirees seem basically sound, and I'm sure they'd make suitable restoration projects. All that needs to be done is to negotiate a satisfactory price and arrange for their removal. There are around 20 of these powerful little diesel-electric centre cab locomotives at work in Sardinia. They were built by Tecnomasio Italiano in Milan as replacements for the aging steam engines. This one has just arrived from Sorgono, which is just 40 kilometers away across the mountains as the flamingo flies, but over 2.5 times that distance by rail. A journey along the branch takes around 4 hours, and for those traveling on to Cagliari, the trip will take the best part of a day. Most passenger services are provided by tiny ADE-03 railcars. The railway's combined fleet of these attractive vehicles numbers 31. They were brought to the island in 1954. The northern section of the narrow gauge system used to cross the standard gauge main line in Makoma. One 950mm gauge tentacle still stretches towards the large town of Nuoro, but the other arm, to Boza on the west coast, was closed in 1981. The yard at Makoma is full of tiny historic pieces of rolling stock. They all seem in good condition, and the overall impression is more of a working museum than an active country railway. This is probably the only place in Europe where loose-coupled goods wagons with individual handbrakes are still in use. There's no vacuum braking system on this line. This is one of the enduring images of Sardinia, a tiny train high on a hillside in a broad landscape. Although small sections of the island's narrow gauge system have disappeared, the island's difficult roads have been the saviour of the rest. The population needs the railway, and it's to be hoped that it will continue to serve the island's widely scattered communities well into the future. It's exactly 10:30 in the morning, and this is Zurich. There's nothing unusual in that, except that this is no ordinary train. It's a little cozier than most, and champagne doesn't usually appear this early in dining cars in other Eurocity expresses. A pianist gently massages the ivories, and the barman prepares for the pre-lunch aperitif onslaught. In the plush salon cars, there's time to put the entrepreneurial feet up and enjoy the passing Swiss scenery. Of course, you've guessed it, this is the Orient Express. Not the Venice Simplon Orient Express, but the nostalgic Orient Express, owned by that distinguished Swiss plutocrat, Albert Glatt. This is not just a short excursion, this is a real journey in the grand style. Not to Istanbul or the mystic East, but north to the land of the midnight sun. In 2.5 days' time, the 13-car train will pull into Narvik, Western Europe's most northerly station. And the citizens of Copenhagen, Oslo, Stockholm and Kiruna will have a chance to feast their eyes upon one of the world's most celebrated trains. And the celebrities within will have the chance to feast and feast and feast. Regretfully, I must report that the film crew can only ride to Copenhagen, where their places will be taken by guests who have discreetly transferred large sums of Swiss francs to Intraflug in Zurich. That's Herr Glatt's travel company. There's plenty of time for the train's personnel to perfect their perfect art in the most perfect surroundings. This, then, is the Midnight Sun Pullman Express for the Arctic. Sit back and enjoy. After 20 hours on the main lines of Switzerland and Germany, the great Belt has to be crossed to Denmark. The train's 13 cars are split into 3 sections in the bowels of a train and car ferry. Unloading is achieved with caution. The first car is Voiture Lee number 3851, built by Breda in 1940 for use in Italy. Car number 1283 was built by Metro in 1929 for the Simplon Orient Express. It was a star in the famous film Murder on the Orient Express. Car 2741 was built by Dietrich in 1926 for the Sud Express. Now follows a first-class Pullman number 4158 dating from 1929 and a sister coach also built in the same year. The next vehicle also dates from 1929, and it was built as part of the same batch as the 2 before it. Now it serves as a salon, bar, piano car. Number 3551 was built in 1929 for the Tram Bleu as a sleeping car. As was the following car, number 3542. Number 4013 was built in Birmingham in 1926 and is the oldest vehicle in the train. It was rebuilt for a La Scala Opera Tour, and it's now a service car with showers and baths. Unfortunately, the crew had to board for customs clearance before the removal of the rear 4 sleeping cars. All these were built in 1929 for the Tram Bleu. with a tear in the eye that we said goodbye to Herr Glatt's marvellous train in Copenhagen. If you should aspire to grace the train with your presence, Intraflug in Zurich will be pleased to send you its forthcoming programme. Whilst Europe's major carriage builders were turning out luxury cars for famous express trains in the 20s, in the south of England, two rather eccentric gentlemen were building a railway for their own amusement. Racing motorist Captain J. Howe and engineer Henry Greenley created the famous 15-inch gauge Romney, Hythe and Dymchurch Railway. The 15-mile line opened in 1927 as a miniature, double-track main line using massive one-third scale locomotives based on Sir Nigel Gresley's splendid Pacifics of the London North Eastern Railway. Although the railway originated in self-gratification, the two men fully intended that it should operate professionally and provide the local community with a useful service. This it's been doing successfully for more than 60 years, and it's still a major attraction. Not a great deal has changed since the beginning. The images in this early archival film could have been shot at almost any time in the railway's first 3 decades. The line had no shortage of motive power when it opened. The Green Goddess, Northern Chief, and Southern Maid were all two-cylinder Pacifics. A four-wheeled engine known as the Bug looked after shunting, and two large 482 locomotives, Hercules and Samson, supplied power for heavy trains. It's interesting to compare these shots of standard gauge Green Arrow with its 15-inch gauge counterparts. Admittedly, Green Arrow is a 262 rather than a 462, and it was built 9 years after the railway across the Romney Marshes was opened, but the design heritage is immediately obvious. These scenes of the Romney, Hythe and Dymchurch Railway were shot in 1986. In essence, the only thing that's changed recently is an interchange of motive power with the Ravenglass and Eskdale Railway and the loan of several locomotives to the new Bure Valley Railway in Norfolk. Not all locomotives on the line have an LNER design heritage. Number 9, Sir Winston Churchill, is a two-cylinder Pacific with a Canadian outline. It was built in 1931 by the Yorkshire Engine Company, utilising many parts fabricated at New Romney. The boiler came from Krauss in Germany. Originally, she bore the name Dr. Sin, after a famous South Coast smuggler. In 1948, she was renamed Sir Winston Churchill before going off to be exhibited in Toronto. Number 2, Northern Chief, is one of the railway's original locomotives. It was built by Davy Paxman in 1925, well before the line opened. She was used in the construction of the line, and she had the honour of hauling the first official train in the presence of the Duke of York on the 5th of August 1926. She's undergone a number of boiler renewals over the years, and her appearance has changed slightly. In 1971, she went to the Ravenglass and Eskdale Railway for trials to test the merits of 6 coupled locomotives on steep inclines. The Romney Hythe and Dymchurch Railway has the advantage of a level route, making long trains much easier to handle. Number 5, Hercules, was built in 1927 to a freelance design. Again, the builder was Davy Paxman. The intention was to use this large 482 locomotive on heavy freight services, but when the expected traffic failed to materialize, she saw little use on the railway. The long wheelbase caused much greater deterioration in the track than the Pacific's, and when Dr. Sin and Black Prince arrived in 1931, Hercules was withdrawn from service. She lay derelict for several years, but was restored for use on ballast trains in 1936. During the war, she was given partial armor plating to enable her to haul a complete armored train as part of the local defense strategy. After the war, most sharp radius points were removed, and Hercules has been on passenger train duty ever since. Number 8, Hurricane, is a Pacific built to a Great Northern outline. She was built by Davy Paxman in 1927. She was Captain Howe's favorite locomotive, and he could often be seen at the controls in the early days. In 1937, after an in-service failure, she was converted from 3 cylinders to 2. After this, she fell from Captain Howe's favor, and she was ingloriously renamed Blue Bottle for the introduction of a new blue livery train. She got her original name back in 1948. It's astonishing that, like nearly all other locomotives on the line, she's been in almost continuous service for 60 years, which is a great tribute to their designer, Henry Greenley. Before we leave the delightful Romney Hythe and Dymchurch Railway, it must be recorded that there are several diesels on the line. This petrol-driven scooter is used on maintenance of way trains. Until the early 80s, it seemed unlikely that the railway would ever have need of mainline diesel locomotives, but the requirement to continue to run school services out of tourist season led to a close examination of the economics involved. A similar locomotive to this one was borrowed from the Ravenglass and Eskdale Railway for trials, after which the management was entirely convinced. John Southland, named after the founder of Southland School, was built in 1987 by TMA Engineering in Birmingham. It has a gear drive to all axles, which fully utilizes the 112 horsepower output of a 6-cylinder Perkins engine. The locomotive now sees a great deal of service and hauls the twice-daily school train all year round and other trains in the tourist season. The Romney Hythe and Dymchurch Railway was created from the dreams of 2 mildly eccentric Englishmen over 60 years ago. It has adapted and changed with the times, but it still retains the essence of its originator's concept. I'm sure that the indomitable Captain Howie and Henry Greenley would be proud of their railway today.